Hazard Communication Guidelines. Overview. All employees have a right to know the hazards and identities of the chemicals they are exposed to when working, as well as the protective measures available to prevent adverse effects from occurring. The following guidelines can be used to ensure that all affected personnel are aware of the hazards created by materials, chemicals they are exposed to during their work. All tasks involving hazardous materials should meet the requirements of OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, 29 CFR 1926, Subpart D, Hazard Communication. Summary. Definitions. Hazard determination. Containers and labels. Safety data sheet, SDS, management. Access to SDS. Other parties SDS. Training. Non-routine tasks. Emergency response. Additional information. Definitions. Exposure means that an employee is subjected in the course of employment to a chemical that is a physical or health hazard and includes potential, e.g., accidental or possible, exposure. Subjected, in terms of health hazards, includes any route of entry, e.g., inhalation, ingestion, skin contact, or absorption. Immediate use means that the hazardous chemical will be under the control of and used only by the person who transfers it from a labeled container and only within the work shift in which it is transferred. Irritant is a chemical not corrosive but causes a reversible inflammatory effect on living tissue by chemical action at the site of contact. Oxidizer means a chemical other than a blasting agent or explosive that initiates or promotes combustion in other materials, thereby causing fire either of itself or through the release of oxygen or other gases. Sensitizer is a chemical that causes a substantial proportion of exposed people or animals to develop an allergic reaction in normal tissue after repeated exposure to the chemical. Hazard determination. Employees can refer to product labels and SDS to make hazard determinations. Additional information regarding hazard criteria can be found in the appendices of the Hazard Communication Standard, i.e., 29 CFR 1910.1200 Appendix A, Health Hazard Criteria, and Appendix B, Physical Criteria. Questions regarding hazard determinations should be directed to the Safety Department. Containers and labels. All containers of known or potentially hazardous materials should be labeled in accordance with all applicable standards, e.g., OSHA, NFPA, etc. Each applicable party is responsible for the proper labeling of their materials and/or containers. All hazardous material labels must include the following information. See Appendix A for a sample label. Pictograms. See Appendix B for a pictogram summary. Signal words. Hazard and precautionary statements. Product identifier. Suppler identification. Hazard labels that become illegible due to damage, removal, etc. should be replaced as soon as possible with the same label or equivalent label providing all the relevant hazard information. Transfer containers may not need to be labeled if the hazardous material at hand is transferred into said container and used immediately by the employee completing the transfer. Safety data sheet, SDS, management. When applicable, rely on the SDS and/or known material data to provide the necessary safety controls, e.g., the label does not provide enough information. Access to SDS. Clune job sites will have SDS QR codes located on the safety banner that lists Clune materials on site. Employees can call any member of the Safety Department for assistance. A searchable version of the NIOSH, National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, Pocket Guide to Chemical Hazards can be accessed at http://www.cdc.gov/NIOSH/NPG/. Employees needing immediate information regarding hazard materials can call Poison Control Center, 800-222-1222. Chemtrec, 800-424-9300. Dot Hotline, 800-467-4922. The applicable supplier, distributor. Other parties SDS. If work is going to be conducted in an existing facility, determine the location of the existing SDS from the appropriate party, e.g., facilities manager. When applicable, request copies of or access to SDS and inventory lists from the relevant trade partners. File these documents accordingly, e.g., in the project field office, and inform project personnel of the location, e.g., during orientations or crew leader meetings. Training. General hazard communication training will be provided to Clune employees through various methods, including toolbox talks, orientations, etc. Discussion topics include labels, SDS, and general hazard communication procedures. Non-routine tasks. The project team should be notified when hazardous materials will be used and what methods will be put in place to protect employees, other personnel, and public and property. All personnel should comply with the applicable materials SDS information and applicable compliance codes, e.g., OSHA, municipal ordinances. Coordinate non-routine tasks with the safety department so that employees are informed of the risks, trained on the applicable safe procedures, protected as the situation requires. Questions regarding whether a task is considered non-routine should be directed to the safety department prior to the start of the work. Emergency response. In the event of a chemical, material-related emergency, refer to the project's emergency action plan. Use the product label, SDS, as a response reference. Contact the safety department for assistance as needed. High-risk activity forecasting and planning. A high-risk activity, HRA, plan should be developed for tasks involving hazardous materials on site. The following elements should be described as part of the Level 2 plan, which will involve a meeting 1 to 2 weeks before the task takes place. The identification of hazardous materials in the work scope and schedule. The process to perform work activities with hazardous materials, including a job hazard analysis and risk assessment. A hazardous material inventory, including SDSs. Training and authorization requirements for those who work directly with hazardous materials, and awareness training for those who work around hazardous materials. Site-specific emergency response plan. All other EHS, environmental health and safety, procedures, safe work permits and regulatory requirements specific to hazardous materials. On the day of the activity, a daily hazard analysis will be completed, which should include required PPE, personal protective equipment associated with the task. Any previous near misses, incidents or lessons learned for the previous day's work. Change management process that evaluates impacts of hazardous materials and designs. The steps of the task of the day, the hazards, and their mitigation. Crew sign in section. Additional information. OSHA 29 CFR 1926.59. Subpart D. Hazard communication 1910.1200. Cal. OSHA Title 8 California Code of Regulations 5194, 339, 3302, Appendix G number 12601. Copyright https://www.osha.gov/publications/OSHA3642.pdf. Appendix A. Sample label. Appendix B. Pictogram summary.